Today, Steven learned. And I guess I learned too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just maddening.
So you need a GX20 is what you need, right?
I bought a GX16 and I need a GX20, and that will work just fine.
Well, at least we solved what the problem was.
Yeah. Okay. Um.
Hello, everyone in chat. What's going on? How you doing this fine Monday? Probably glad that Monday's over. Because I am. Well, technically it's not over yet. Gotta still do the podcast. Yeah. We got some riveting. Today was supposed to be a holiday. um, MacFab doesn't take days off. Basically, we only get the days, like, the only actual days we get off are, well, PTO. And then plus, whenever, like, FedEx and UPS don't deliver. Or pick up.
You get federal holidays off.
Not all the federal holidays. USPS got today off. Banks got today off.
Sorry, I mean the federal mandated for everyone days off, not like teachers, schools,
Correct.
banks. Not
Well,
those
today is
holidays.
like George Washington / President's Day.
Right.
When did they change it to President's Day versus President like Washington's birthday or something like that?
Don't know.
When the sun goes down, you can leave. There's a holiday for you, Luminor? A Luminator? Luminor. Luminor would be like... that'd be a wrestler's name.
I used to mock my wife because when she was a teacher, she would get a ton of days off.
Uh-huh.
And she'd be like, "Oh, do you have this day off?" And she was like being legitimate. I was like, "No, why would I have like some random like it's like green t-shirt day. We have it off, you know?" And I'll be
T-shirt
like,
day.
"No, why have I ever had that day off? Why would I have that day off?" It's dead President's Day.
Ah. It's buy a car day. Yeah, I guess they all have their advertisements for President's Day. It's
You
almost
don't
one of
need to
those
give
like if you're
salespeople a reason
paying
to have a
full cost for
blowout.
a car, you're doing it wrong because there's so many sales. So I've got this air quality meter here, and I was just reading basically the caution label on the back, and it says the sensor may be damaged in highly polluted air. But isn't that what it's supposed to measure?
That's like the Geiger counters in the Chernobyl show where they were just showing maximum and they were like, "Well, this isn't too bad because they were just showing maximum," when in reality it was like so many times past maximum
Yeah.
that that's all they could demonstrate.
Oh wow.
Yeah. That show's amazing if you haven't seen it.
No, I haven't seen it yet. It's on the list.
Yeah.
Well, let's get this podcast rolling. Talked enough about vacations that we don't get. or holidays we don't get. Steven?
Oh, sorry, what was it?
Oh, going to start the podcast?
Oh, sorry, I just got an email.
Oh, let me know when you're ready.
Oh, okay, yeah. Go ahead.
You can read it.
No. It's all good. That's work. I need to do that tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Like I'm off of work right now.
Bump my monitor. Welcome to the Macrofab Engineering Podcast, a weekly show about all things engineering, DIY projects, manufacturing, industry news, and picking the right assembly machines. We're your hosts, electrical engineers, Parker Dillman.
And Stephen Craig.
This is episode 367. And if you've been listening to the last couple of episodes, you know what's coming next. The news about May 4th.
And any kind of extra news?
No, not yet.
Okay. So what is happening on May 4th?
Besides it being the 4th day of May, the month of May, we're bringing back the Macrofab Engineering Meetup. So if you're in the Houston area or for some reason want to visit Houston to come to Macrofab, I would say that would be a pretty lame vacation, but you do you. We're going to have like a couple talks, food, drinks, that kind of stuff. It's like a social networking event. We used to do these all the time years and years ago, and then we kind of like Macrofab outgrew our space. Thus, we had to kind of axe the meetup because we just didn't have space to do the meetup. We didn't have space for 100 people to show up and, talk, basically.
So this will happen at the new HQ at that.
Be at the new HQ. We're still kind of working out the kinks of new HQ, but I'm hoping by May that they're all worked out. Just like organization and that kind of stuff, because it's a much bigger facility, and it's kind of weird having so much space again. It's like when we first moved into Governor Street, Stephen. Remember, we were like, there's no way we're ever going to use all this space. There's so much room.
Yeah.
And it only took like 2 years. And then we're like, oh no, we're out of space. And then we were there for like another 4.
Right. But now you have a big place where you can hold events like this.
Yeah, we have our news place. We can hold events again. So we are going to do that again.
Okay. And we'll keep talking about it until it happens.
Or marketing tells us otherwise.
Well, and marketing as we get closer will also start revealing more information about the actual details.
Yeah, I think they're
right
still
now,
working out.
May 4th.
Yeah, the May 4th details, yeah. I think they're still working out like what they're actually going to talk about and that kind of stuff. All right, so our first topic today is a question from our Slack channel, user Eric Smith. I don't know if that's Eric Smith's name or just username, but
actually we got a slew of questions that all were very interesting that I don't know if we've ever talked about before. So we were like, hey, this is great. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so we actually never talked about any of this stuff. So Steven and I, Steven works for another contract manufacturer. I started Macrofab. So we've both been in the trenches, so to speak, about this topic before. I guess this is something that we've never even thought about talking about until Eric Smith asked these questions.
Yeah. So first question that Eric asked was, how do you find new machines for the factory lines? So we're talking about new conveyors, new pick and place machines, new ovens, new assembly machines. Just how do you go about finding new machines for your factory?
So for me, it's YouTube, and going to conferences and shows. That's my 2 main ways like when I look at machines, that's what I do.
Yeah, I would say I'll second YouTube on that. I have found a few machines due to YouTube, and mainly that's just going down the rabbit hole of like, okay, we know we need to do something. We know we need a machine to do something. What kind of technology exists? And you start finding the keywords via just watching videos.
Yeah, and
And
listening to people talk about that stuff.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that brings you down the rabbit hole of like, okay, this is the keyword I need to look for. I've also had a bit of success through resellers and vendors. So just basically contacting, I'm using air quotes, our guy at our machine place and being like, hey, we need a machine that does X, and he's like, I'll get you literature on it.
Yeah, that like they have experience with that process or what you need to do. Thus, they have a machine that might work for you.
Right.
That'd be useful to have. I don't really. I guess I could call some of the companies that we already done business with, but the trick is if you're starting out new, you don't really have that kind of business connection. So it's like figuring that out, and it might be like maybe finding someone, like finding the most local person to you, because it depends. And seeing if there's like a vendor or a distributor of the industry equipment that you're looking for. In this case, like surface mount technology equipment.
Right.
Yeah, that would be a good way. But yeah, resellers is. I've never had a really good experience with a reseller, but I've used resellers to go look at stuff.
Yeah, to kind of get ideas and things.
Yeah, to get ideas. Used equipment has always ended up biting me in the butt.
Well, biting you in the butt in terms of you have to do a lot of work to make it happy.
Yeah, make it happy. Whereas buying new... The problem with buying used is you never know the history of whoever maintained that machine before you. That's what it boils down to. So even if it fires up and works fine the first time, you don't know what the maintenance life cycle of that machine was and what's near the end of its life, like a bearing going out or something. I just remember that reflow oven that we had, the Bravo reflow oven, and how many times I rebuilt that entire machine from the ground up.
Well, we redlined that thing 24/7 basically.
Yeah. So we bought this is back really early Macrofab. We bought our first
Electrovert.
An Electrovert reflow oven. And I would say it was kind of our first big boy oven. It was still not big, but it was like
it was only a 4-zone.
It was only a 4-zone, but it was like it required the pallet jack to lift it up and move it around. So it was
it was big.
It was big-ish. I mean, you put it next to like our Heller ovens that we have that are like 7 zones or 8 zoners. I think actually one's like a 9. Anyways,
those Hellers Electrovert, you could lift the lid with just your arms. You did it like the Hellers have like pneumatic assist.
You press a button and it opens up.
Yeah. So the Electrovert's in that kind of a category.
Yeah. But we bought it and this was through a reseller. They were like, yeah, this machine totally does lead-free reflow. And actually, yes, it has a sticker on it that says it does lead-free reflow. Technically. You basically, the heaters on it have to run at 100% duty cycle. And when it's running at 100% duty cycle, the inner chamber gets so hot that the fans stop working. The convection fans.
It drastically reduces the blowers and the capacitor's lifespan.
Yeah. So replacing bearings, replacing capacitors, and like we couldn't get these. Like I was like finding replacement. Like the fan module, we couldn't really buy for. I mean, we could buy them, but they were like $1,000, and that was like more than an order of magnitude more than we wanted to spend on this machine. And so it's like rebuilding bearings, capacitors, finding motors that would kind of work, and then like adapting them to make them work. Because they were just
that was the Wild West days.
I mean, it was only 240 volt AC, so it's like a motor that would just fit the hole that it would mount in would work, right? And we just couldn't get anything that would last longer than maybe a couple months, and then another motor would go out. And the great thing is they would make a screeching noise so you knew when to go replace it. It wasn't just like the board stopped reflowing. The machine, it would swing its swan song at you, and then you have to go replace bearings. So,
Yeah.
But
that was through a reseller.
That was through a reseller.
Okay, practically every machine I've worked with has quirks of some sort, right? Like, and when you go to sell it, you may or may not, need to or tell the buyer those quirks. I mean, there's certain things where it's like, I don't know if it's important for me to tell you this quirk. You'll figure it out. And that's not me being like unethical in any way. It's just like, that's just how it goes kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's some machines I recently sold where I disclosed some things to the buyer beforehand, just saying like, hey, I just want you to know that like occasionally it does this thing. And if you're buying it knowing it occasionally does this thing, And I think that's reasonable. But maybe there's others where like, I don't know, maybe something will rattle or something like that, and you don't necessarily have to tell them that. But yeah, you don't get that when you go to a reseller. You don't get to discuss that with the person.
It's kind of like buying a used car, but the thing is, a lot of used car, at least if you buy from like a dealership, they usually have some like, we've done 148.3 point inspection on this thing, and you're like, I have no idea what that means, but that sounds good. Usually you get, if you go to a really good dealer, your used car is going to be in pretty good shape. But if you buy from Joe Schmo, that mileage may vary.
Yeah.
But you can get really good deals, that kind of stuff. Like our first couple picking places were through resellers as well. We just couldn't afford buying new stuff.
Right.
And
we bought our Samsung pick and place. We bought that used 7-8 years ago, and there has been zero things wrong with it. The only thing we've ever had to do is grease the rails. That's basically it.
Yeah.
It has been a fantastic machine.
Yeah, I think it just really depends, and it depends on really the previous person that owned it, and did they properly maintain it. If they properly maintained it, and when it traveled between that person, the reseller, and you, and everything, it was taken care of during shipping, there should be nothing wrong with the machine. But there's always something.
It's on you to, if you're the buyer, it's on you to figure that out, or to assume whatever risk comes with that.
Yeah. But resellers are a great way to go look at a lot of different brands at once, because they will have lots of stuff.
Another thing that you can learn pretty well from resellers, and I find this to be really useful, and a lot of people I don't really look into this, is accessories that go with the machine that you're going to need. Talk to the reseller about that. Because you could find great deals on pick and place machines, but find out that the magazines and feeders are really difficult to get a hold of. Well, that kind of cripples the machine. That makes the machine really hard to use, because you may have a job that comes up and you need 3 or 4 more feeders, and they're either very expensive or very hard to find because everyone wants them, or whatever reason they're not available. Going to resellers, you can see, instead of looking at the machine, look at their stock of accessories for the machine. If they have a massive stock of accessories, that might not be the most popular machine out there, but it also might be good because there's availability.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, look at your reseller's bone pile too.
That's true.
Remember the universal GSM we had at MacFab, and that reseller had tons of broken GSM machines that they were cobbling together.
Yeah,
that should have been a warning flag, but we didn't have money, so you bought what you can get.
You got what you got.
Yeah. I don't think we ever had a successfully assembled board all the way through on that machine ever.
Oh, we had a few.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah,
We didn't have
it
that
was a
machine.
it was
We
a
actually
tough
think
machine.
about we didn't really have that machine for long.
No.
It was about maybe less than a year until we finally put on our bank pants and got a loan to buy a Micronic.
To buy a real machine. I shouldn't say real machine,
No,
but buy
no,
a better machine.
buy a new machine.
Okay, so here's the thing. What I've found when it comes to buying machines, once you have already been in the game, so in other words, once you've already had some level of machinery and you're ready to buy your next machines, the one of the most important things is just determining what your pain points are and fixing those pain points with the next machine.
Yes.
So what sucked about your old machine, you're looking for the solution
Yeah.
in your next machine for that. And for example, we had a paste machine that worked plenty fine, but its vision was awful, and it was very difficult to teach. Uh, and it didn't have any like Gerber imports, so it couldn't like compare your Gerbers to its vision. You basically had to get lucky that your boards were made so well that it could see through the stencil and like identify everything. Well, that was a massive pain point. We ran into tons of problems with it. So the next time we bought a stencil printer, we made absolutely sure that the vision was great, and it had Gerber import where you could duck in a Gerber and you could click a few things and it would be like, yeah, sure, I'll go find those through the stencil.
Mm-hmm.
So I've certainly run into that a handful of times. And basically with the GSM machine, our pain point was it not be the GSM.
Yeah, it just didn't really work too well.
Yeah.
Do you guys get mailed catalogs? So Steven says yes to this. Are you talking about like catalogs for equipment?
Well,
Or
I put
supplies?
2 points here. I say I get catalogs for auctions, but I don't get catalogs for new machines.
Yeah, I
So,
get neither.
like, if a company's going out of business, there's a few places I'm involved with that will send catalogs
Okay.
of like here's the things that are being auctioned off. But I don't think I've ever gotten a brochure or a flyer just randomly cold turkey be like, do you need a pick and place?
I've had
We have this.
cold emails from places
Yeah.
wanting to sell me machines, but never a catalog or anything like that. Do I get mailed? I get a lot of supplies, like from random vendors I've never heard of before.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it on that one, though. But the next one, which is, do you go to conferences? I haven't gone in a couple years, but like going to CES, that's a good way to look at machines. If you're looking at buying new machines, going to CES is where you can see all the new tech on placement machines and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Troy, who's the director of engineering here at Macrofab, he went to CES this year, and he got to look at like a flying probe machine and stuff.
Those are cool.
Those are really cool. I always like get that like horror movie aspect. It's like, what if your hand was in there and it was like, and it turned on and it started poking you with all those golden needles.
Have you ever seen the automated hand solder machines that are basically the same thing, but it's
soldering
just a
iron?
soldering iron with a
Wire feed?
that feed
Oh yeah.
soldering?
Oh yeah. Those things are awesome.
Yeah, those are
actually.
cool. Those
I
are
don't.
really, really
That
cool.
doesn't really invoke the same mental image for me, at least. Maybe because it's not sharp. But yeah, for some reason, I'm like, I just like imagine like your hand stuck in that machine and it gets turned on and it just like starts jabbing you with, and like measuring the resistance of your hand. Now my hand.
Yeah,
hurts.
one of the first professional boards I designed, we had a bunch of rules that I had to apply at the end of the design to be able to make it ready for that because we use that process at RCM. And mainly what it was I had to go in and put exposed pads all over my board for every single net. You had to give a test point, and that took me a very long time to do because we had a lot of nets on that board, and I wasn't aware that we were designing for that. And then at the end, they were like, "Hey, have you made test points for the flying probe?" It's like, "Oh no, I haven't." Yeah. There's a lot of stuff like that that you're not aware of until you're aware of it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
until someone asks you the question, "Hey, have you done this?"
Yeah. So here's the next question: if you find something which could be potentially good, how do you evaluate it? Is there something like a trial period with the manufacturer? The answer to that is no. There is no trial periods, um, at least for the big machines. I've gotten trial periods for like desktop style stuff, equipment.
hmm hmm
You can get trial periods. Um,
I've gotten trial periods for soldering irons actually, where
yeah,
a
soldering
representative
irons.
will drop one off.
Yeah, stuff that seems to be like you can maybe move it. Uh, it it can be moved in a cardboard box. Is about seems to be the limiting factor. The moment it has to
Sure.
go on a pallet, I've never seen anyone actually give you an evaluation period for it. So yeah, research is key, and really, it's like that salesperson's got to sell it to you. Um, I know some companies will do where like you can fly out on your own dime to go look at stuff. Like you can
Yeah,
go,
they'll have like a floor model that's functioning.
yeah, floor models. I've gone to another facility that like another CM that had a machine that we were looking at, and like basically we contacted like, hey, we look at this, and like, yeah, let's find a CM. I thought it was a little weird that would allow you to go on their floor, but it worked out. Didn't buy that machine because like I talked to the operator, and the operator's like, this thing's a piece of shit.
That's funny.
Didn't buy it. But again, that was all on your own dime. Like we had to fly out and go do that. Um, if it's like you're gonna spend like 250K on some of these machines, but you don't get to do like a test drive like you would a car.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's really weird.
On some of our really expensive machines, we let in purchasing it, we did a lot of phone calls with the manufacturer, and we let them do their spiel where they tried to sell it to us, and then we had other phone calls where we would write a whole bunch of questions beforehand of, you know, can it do this? And they would say yes, and we would say how. Explain it to me. Step me through how it accomplishes that. How does it scratch my back? Like these are the
Mm-hmm.
must haves. These are the nice to have kind of situations. So we kind of tried to test drive it through just discussing with their application engineers.
And that's the big thing is just because they say yes to one, have them explain or show you how, especially if it's
Yes.
in your needs to do this list,
Yeah.
because we're going to get to examples of machines you regret purchasing, and I got a
Yeah.
lot of those, and a
hmm
lot of them stem from we would ask the right question but not the right follow-up question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. Because you know, maybe perhaps when you ask the question, does it do XYZ? The answer is yes, but there's more to it because maybe you needed to do XYZ and this certain thing, or you needed to do XYZ
In a
over
particular
and over
way.
and over, and it can't do that or whatever.
Yeah, basically.
Like whenever we did that, we tended to be happy with our the purchases. Whenever we didn't do that, we tended to get blindsided by something.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So,
Examples of
yeah, what is an
machines.
example?
Yeah, examples of machines you have purchased and regretted.
Yeah,
I got one off the bat. That
go for it.
Universal GSM picking place.
Yeah, yeah.
What a piece of junk.
I mean, but in its credit, it made boards for you guys.
It did.
Yeah, and it bridged the gap between the desktop thing and your not Mamaki, sorry, your
Micronics.
gosh, what is it? Micronics, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We've already talked about that machine, so let's skip that one for now. And we already talked about the reflow, and that was garbage. We have a X-ray machine, and I can't remember who's it's by. It's a South Korean company. Um, Man, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like an XI 5000. So if you like Google XI 5000, you can find the manufacturer. Um, we needed to get an X-ray machine, but the people. This is the thing. It should really be the engineers in your company should be speccing and buying these machines, not the operator side. Because we had a person who was an operator basically buy this machine and spec it out, and it does nothing that we need it to do. Like it has great resolution for X-rays. All the software end is awful though.
I'm curious what it doesn't what itch it doesn't scratch.
Nothing automated. It is seriously a table that you put something in and you can drive to it and like look at an X-ray.
Oh, so you want software integration with
Yes.
basically everything.
Oh yeah. Like that's my first thing is like based on like the first thing I asked these companies is like show me how I integrate with this. Because I don't want to write programs. I already have the MacFab platform. The platform builds programs for me. So I need to be able to push that program and or change that program in whatever way and make that machine consume that data. And this machine is just it doesn't do any of that. And
it's just very manual.
It's very manual and it's frustrating when you like want to take pictures of a lot of boards. It's like, well, now I have to have an operator there and to look and train that operator to look for a certain defect all the time. It's a little frustrating.
That's exactly to the point we were making earlier. Like that is a fully functional machine. There's nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong with the machine.
It just doesn't fit your use case.
Yes, correct. Because if you have a fully trained X-ray operator, it works great.
Right. Which, like you said, from the person who purchased it, that was their mindset in purchasing it.
Exactly.
And X-ray machines are also not cheap, so that one stings a bit, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so at WMD a handful of years ago, we purchased a Mimaki UV printer, which that is something I never want to touch ever again is UV printing. In fact, it was purchased. That machine was actually purchased right before I showed up, and when I showed up, my first job at WMD was getting this printer to work, and I worked on this printer for 3 years. And I went through 3 separate employees quitting because of this one machine. It was an absolute nightmare. Combining chemistry and electronics in a production environment is very difficult. And I say chemistry as in like mixing colors to get it to be right and getting it to cure and getting it to be perfect. There's a reason why there's entire companies dedicated to just marking your product or making it look nice and things like that. Bringing every little process in-house, it sounds great. It comes with an enormous amount of headaches. And this printer, I really do think we were sold a lemon. It never worked properly. I could never calibrate it. I could never get it to be consistent. I might get a print on it that looked good, and then we'd start production, and my operator would be like, hey, the first 5 came out bad. Should I continue, kind of thing? And it was a nightmare to deal with. And so I absolutely regret us. I technically didn't purchase it, but it became my machine.
I remember the one time you gave me a tour of WMD, and I remember the greenhouse that y'all built for that machine.
Yeah. We built, and that was supposed to be a temporary thing because we were running some tests to see if the environment, like, okay, think of a machine that's already finicky, and then pressure, temperature, and humidity also affect its production capability, and now you're just like banging your head on a table trying to trying to juggle a bunch of different variables to make sure that your thing comes out satisfactory for whatever customer you're dealing with. It's a nightmare. So yeah, I certainly regretted buying that. And the funny thing was when it was purchased, it was a choice between that machine or a slightly more expensive one. And in hindsight, looking back, the slightly more expensive one has an unbelievably good track record of like just being great at this and being way easier to use. And a little bit of money was tried to be saved by purchasing this other machine, and it was a huge mistake. In fact, I contract some other people who print on the one that we could have purchased, and they come out great every single time. So I learned a lot from it. I know what to expect from that process, and I can speak intelligently to to an operator who's running the machine about certain things. But I never want to operate one myself. They're so awful. So,
Yeah, I'm speaking of that. You like what you got yourself into and what you learned from it. Um, we have the opportunity at Macrofab to set up a vapor phase oven.
ooh, those are cool.
Yeah, so I have me and you and like a couple other people are like, ooh, shiny new machine. This is gonna be awesome. And then like Troy is like, I never want to run one of these ever again in my life. Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, valid, but vapor phase.
They are very shiny, and they have their use case that makes
They do
them
have their
really,
use
really
cases.
special.
And so
They're
I
very
think it's
cool.
going to be one of those. I need to do more research and figure out like what the maintenance, because basically they're maintenance heavy reflow ovens. They're very maintenance heavy.
And
Um,
they're process sensitive.
and they're process sensitive. So it's like, I think what I'm going to do is I am going to set it up and then play around with it before even attempting to use it for anything in production. That's what I want to do, and
Yeah.
just see how bad. If it's bad, be like, nope, let's put it back on the crate and sell it. So
Wait, do you already have one?
we got one at auction.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah.
So
So
you get to play around with it. That's
yeah,
cool.
but it's
Okay, that's a good lesson actually. If you're starting out a company, or if you're in the market for buying machines, if there's a machine that seems like it, you know, has all these cool bells and whistles and these features that are like, whoa, that sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Like Vaporphase promises to alleviate a lot of your pain points and stuff, and it will. But it's one of those machines that if you know you need it, then you need it. But don't get confused. Like there's, it's it comes with a lot of headaches. So don't be enticed too much by that kind of
mm-hmm.
thing. Like there's a reason why there's a gazillion straight down the middle machines that do the task, because that's usually the best way to do it, or the easiest way to do it without a lot of headache.
Yeah. So the last question that's under this kind of umbrella of SMT equipment questions is, Eric Smith is curious if you prefer to keep homogeneous lines or do you prefer to optimize some lines to a particular task, less precise but more throughput. I can come up with good arguments either way. It sounds like you all keep things pretty dynamic and reconfigure fairly often.
Well, he just kind of got to the baseline of what macrofab even is, right?
Yeah.
Like,
So our line itself is pretty homogeneous, or two lines. We've been running a line and a half for last couple of years now. With our new facility, we actually have two proper lines, and we actually have space to put two more in now. Like I set up that floor so we can put two lines in without even needing to get like electrician or anything out. Like I make sure all the powers run, all the waters ran, all the air is run, everything's, and all the exhaust is in. So like all I have to do is just get machines and put them on the floor,
mhm.
and then like calibrate them and all that stuff. But I would say it's a good idea to for for a process. Let's say SMT process. So everything super convenient if they could all talk to each other, because it's less programming in terms of you need to learn less software. So we mostly stick with Micronic stuff because all that software works all the same way. Now, your reflow oven there's no Micronic reflow ovens, at least I don't think there are. But there's no reason to program a reflow oven really, besides like your temp profile. You don't have to like change it a lot per board.
Actually, as a quick tangent, eh, I've talked to so many people that when you mention the word oven, there's all these conversations about like custom temp profiles and all these things. It's been my experience that ovens are a lot more set it and forget it than people make them out to be.
It
Like,
depends for
there's-
sure.
It depends. There are situations where you need custom profiles, but they're kind of rare.
Custom profiles are more exception to the rule.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Most I would say 90% of our boards fit within our normal profile setup.
Yeah, at WMD, we have two profiles. We have your everyday profile that works for almost everything. And then we have a super hot profile for things that like 8-layer boards with a lot of stuff that and I ran profiles on both of them and basically set them up that way where it's just like, look, if you need to absolutely cook something to get it to stick, we have the super profile. But I can think of two, not even products, two boards that we ever run the super hot profile on. Everything else solders beautifully. And yeah, we don't have a massive amount of variety, but it's also been my experience at Macrofab that it's not like we were changing the profile every run. You might change it every very long once in a while.
Yeah.
And you change it for like one thing and then you go back to the regular
back.
profile.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I would say the thing is about modern machines, even like modern chip shooters, which are designed to do like chip components like capacitors and resistors, that whole like less precise but more throughput, it's not really less precise. The chip shooters are just as accurate as your normal pick and place. It's just its nozzle setup is dedicated to do one particular type of component, one shape of component. That's the big difference between those machines. Whereas like the Micronic might have to switch its nozzle almost every other time because it's picking up different parts all over the place. Because the Micronics that we have are really, really high mix, low volume setups, but they still do like 20,000 places an hour. All right, so it's like it still can cook, like it can still haul, but
Right.
And a lot of times, like I'll put it this way: if you're buying any modern pick and place, even at a high mix, low volumes like Micronics, they are not going to be your bottleneck, and in your process. Your bottleneck is going to be like QA.
Right.
Your
right,
quality
right.
insurance is going to be your bottleneck.
Or if you have paste inspection having to be done by an operator sitting at a machine, that'll be your bottleneck.
That'll be your bottleneck. Oh man, yeah. If that's anything, is make sure you're doing paste inspection. Either getting a machine that can do it, like some stencil machines can do it by themselves. Sometimes you need your own. We have my 700 paste jetters that we can use as solder paste inspectors too. So even if we stencil it, we can inspect it with those machines.
Yeah.
That's like that fixed a lot of our process issues a couple of years ago. Is actually start inspecting paste for everything.
Oh yeah.
And even if it's
if you want to see a cool chip shooter video, go to YouTube and look up the Fuji CP-643. It's a 20 head chip shooter that just has like a rotating Gatling gun that shoots passives onto the board. It's really cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I would. When you're at that point, a lot of your QA is automated. and so you don't really have to worry about. But I'll put it this way: most of the time, QA is going to be your bottleneck, not your machine. So I wouldn't really worry about that, especially if you're like, if you're doing any kind of like hand placements, like you don't have all the, like, let's say feeders to do a run, and so you're hand placing parts on some of them. Don't worry about getting a chip shooter then, because your hand placing is going to be so much slower than that machine is ever going to be.
I think
Your price is better off spent buying more feeders and more capability for your machine to assemble more stuff.
mhm. Machines like chip shooters fit in that specialty category of if you know you need it, then you need it,
Mm-hmm.
but you probably don't need it. And they're way more expensive, and maintenance on them is a bit more rough. Honestly, you might consider buying two non-chip shooter machines
That's
and
what
then
we did.
splitting your load between them. Like have one do all your passives, have the other do the big stuff. And
So we actually
you'd probably still get the same throughput.
are doing serialized pick and places.
Okay.
So pick and place 1 goes through it, does all the stuff, and then it goes through pick and place 2, and that way we can load. We basically are trying to eliminate how much hand placing we do.
Yeah.
We actually have found that there's two areas that are that hurt us on quality right now, and it's when we have to hand place. Is hand placing still isn't 100%, and then basically board panel size, bowing during reflow, which is a tough problem to solve too, without having to like get a carrier for everything. And so
Well, and your board size tends to be large.
yeah, it tends to be large too. So we're solving both those problems. To solve the first one, which is reducing hand placing, it's like, well, when you fill up one pick and place, what do? Put another pick and place in line.
Well, and that's just the thing. Like, for example, on our Samsung, the some of the larger feeders or even the trays and things can take up a very sizable portion
Yeah.
of your feeder space. So, I've seen in larger manufacturing facilities, you put all your 8 millimeters on one machine, and then you put all your big chips on the other machine,
Yeah.
and that actually speeds things up quite a bit.
Yeah, that's what they're doing is like, because they can put like 200 8 millimeters on one machine, and then they can put like 30, 40 of the 32 millimeters or something like that. Plus,
Right.
They have a conveyor tray and all that good stuff.
Yep.
And I mean, the tray on a Micronic takes up like, what, 10 slots? It takes up a whole cartridge, which I think is 10.
Right. Yeah.
So you really have to start optimizing that way, I guess.
Well, if the design is not optimized, or if the design just requires that.
Yeah. So that's
actually, I think going for more is better than going for specialized.
Yeah, for sure. Because it does allow us to be a lot more flexible with our lines too.
Right.
One thing I want to try to do is, like load one machine for top side and the other machine for bottom side, and so when you run the panel on your first panel, right, and then have your second machine set up as a pass through, right, and then it just passes through, goes into the reflow, and then on the second run through, you already have your second machine set up, ready to go, and so you don't have to break down your machine and set it back up. So you can just keep running through. So while you're running the bottom side of job, let's say A, you can break down your first machine and set it up for job B, the next job on top side, and then you're running top side B, and then your other machine that's doing the bottom side, you're breaking it down and setting it up. So if you have enough feeder space, that works really, really well, because then you basically have, because usually you have like one person that's actually running the machine, and then one person's like kitting and assembling stuff loading the machine, you have like a loader basically. And so
Mhm.
if you keep both of those working at the same time, one, you maximize, you know, your hourly rate basically that your machines can earn, but you're also just reducing downtime to basically zero.
Yeah.
But you have to have,
It's just continuous.
yeah, it's continuous, but you basically have to look at it as you have one machine, it's basically cycling, and but you're at least keeping your line up and running 100% of the time, or close to 100%.
Micronics are also good at doing that because you have the magazine trays, and so you can be stuffing parts in even if the machine's passing boards through it.
Yes, you can just,
Whereas a lot of other machines, you couldn't do both at the same time.
yeah, because it actually will, the Micronics actually go and pull the panel off the conveyor instead of it being on the conveyor while it's assembling.
Right.
It actually pulls it off the conveyor. So if you just have a pass through, yeah, you can just load the machine up, and it's just it's basically just a big long conveyor at that point. But I really like those
expensive conveyor.
Yeah, very expensive conveyor. I really like Micronics. I wish they had faster service. Like a service technician would come out faster, but that's about my only complaint with them. Also, they're expensive, but I guess all those machines are expensive in one way or another.
At some point, it all starts to feel the same, right?
Yeah, it all feels the same. Yeah.
Micronics is way more suited to what you guys are trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't have a lot of like changeover, you probably don't. You can get away with different machines like a Samsung or something like that. But man, we have so many. I mean, I think we do like one machine probably goes through like 10 changeovers a day.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, most people do like one a week, maybe.
If we're cranking at work, we might do 3 changeovers, and they would have to be 3 small jobs.
Yeah.
And yeah, because something like a Samsung is just not really
set up for
speedy at doing changeovers.
It's like the universal GSM on changeovers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the GSM was also dual side, and so you had to walk around to load things and all that. Yeah, that's just.
Is the Samsung
the Micronic is intended for the high mix?
Oh yeah. Is your Samsung dual load sided or?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. It is, but when you do the optimization, basically you give it the bill of materials and you say this part's on this feeder and all that stuff. Actually, it'll tell you that, but you kind of refine it, and then you press optimize, and it'll do all of its. It does as much as it possibly can to minimize the head movement that the machine has to do. And so it really does put all your high run parts like right in the middle, right in what we call the front of the machine. And so for the most part on a regular run, you have to put a few feeders on the back, and there's usually like big stuff like connectors or electrolytic caps or something like that. So it's not that terrible.
I remember the optimization routine on the GSM would sometimes be slower than the entire run. Like actually clicking that button was slower than just letting it run.
Yeah. So you just put it wherever and just let it go.
Yeah.
No, the optimization on the Samsung it's fast. It's a few seconds, and it.
Well, remember this was running OS2 Warp.
Right. Yeah. God, that machine was so big.
Yeah.
It was gargantuan for what it did, and like I even. God, I'm thinking back on it. There was like parts of it that didn't even function, or we never used, or just like forget about that. Like,
remember the tray loader
thing? Maybe
the tray feeder that had a conveyor, so it would drop. It was like a tray, like a stack of. You put a stack of trays in it, so you could put like 32 trays in this thing, and it would. It had its own pick and place head in it, so it would pick a part off the tray and put it on a conveyor. And then the conveyor went into the big pick and place, and then it would pick it up and put it on your board.
That's so overly complicated.
Yeah. When that worked, that was so cool to watch. I think I only got that thing to work like half a dozen times, maybe, though.
Oh, that was that big, like, bulbous thing that hung off the side of it, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right.
I think I spent many hours of my life trying to get that machine to work. That bulbous thing that hung off the side.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any more closing comments about S&T equipment?
I don't think so.
I think we should save the rest of this for next week.
I think so. I didn't know we were going to talk this long about it. One thing to note, the assembly equipment, it's all configurable, and you can connect it all together. There's an interface called SMEMA where you connect, different machines to other machines, and that just allows them to very rudimentarily talk to each other and say, hey, I can't accept a board or whatnot.
Yeah, I can't accept the board. I can accept the board. And also, on the other end, hey, I have a board, or I don't have a board.
And it's really, really simple. The one thing that you can get caught up in is making an assembly line too complicated. They don't need to be complicated 99% of the time. Mm-hmm. Like, you have an input, you have an output, and you have usually humans servicing the inputs and the outputs, and that's usually enough.
Yes.
Like, you can get overly complex with conveyors going all different directions, or I've seen conveyors that'll flip your boards over for you.
Those are really cool.
For processing. They're really cool, but like, that's about, like, for the most part, it's another one of those things. If you know you need that, then you need it. And you have a facility that requires that, but
the volumes most of the time that our lines are doing, those are not needed. Now, there's, Macrofab has the whole marketplace for CMs too. And so we have some CMs that have that stuff for our high volume stuff.
Yep.
But like, I don't run those. But I've been to CMs that have had them and watched them work, and they're pretty nice. But you're talking like, you're doing like 50,000 plus panels of a run.
Right. I've seen places have conveyors that have conditional statements in the conveyor where it's, if this, then it'll direct and drive your board to a different location. Or for double-sided stuff, it'll turn back and like deliver the board back to the beginning and like auto stack them into trays. Super cool, great for really high volume stuff. For anything under, anything in reasonable quantity, you kind of don't need that. So in other words, if you're thinking about your factory of the future, like, it actually pays to not go overboard with this kind of stuff. Everything you buy is another headache.
That is true. That is 100% true.
Yeah.
As I'm going to fire up a vapor phase oven in the next month or so.
All you need is conditional conveyors that are like, does this go to the regular oven or does this go off to the vapor oven?
99.999% time it's the regular oven. Well, because
but it needs to automatically connect to the Macrofab system so it can pull in information on the order and automatically go in the right direction.
The problem with the vapor phase, it's also, those are batch ovens too.
Yeah,
because it's a chamber with that phase change fluid in it. I can't wait to actually get that to work. That's a machine that Steven and I have always wanted when we were at Macrofab. So
we talked about it a bunch of times.
Yeah,
but it was all like pie in the sky kind of stuff.
Yeah, because they were really expensive at the time. And we
got really expensive, and also like if you ever tried to say like, "Hey, what do you think about a vapor phase?" to the the bean counters, they were like, "Explain the use of why you would need them," and I'm like, "It's cool.
It's cool." It solders very dense components really well. It's about its use case.
It also doesn't necessarily subject them to way high temperatures.
That's true. Well, small temp parts. So basically, it allows you to. It's sous vide for PCBs. That's what it is.
Right. It brings them up to the solder temperature.
Yeah, but it allows it to heat soak at that temperature. Whereas like a normal reflow, you have like your hottest oven is like 280, which is 280 Celsius, which is well above what all the parts are spec'd at. But the parts never get up to there because they peak and then they're out of the oven cooling back down. So they never.
It's sous vide versus making cookies, where you're timing the cookies coming out of the oven such that
Yes.
they're at the right temperature. That's like regular reflow,
Yeah.
whereas vapor phase is like sous vide, where it comes up to the temperature and they don't get exposed to above that
Yeah,
temperature.
and you can let it sit at that temperature for really ever how long you need it to, so that the big dense components can actually get up to that temperature.
It's arguably a bit more, I don't gentle in a way on
Yeah,
components,
it is.
as opposed to just blasting them and hoping that their thermal mass meets equilibrium at
Yeah,
the
but all the
melting
components
temperature.
that are
Right?
all different thermal masses and different sizes and densities all have to reach that temperature at roughly the same time. It's honestly
And you
surprising
don't.
that regular reflow works as well as it does when you talk about it that way.
Yeah, yeah. And the differential heating based on the leading edge of the board is getting nuked, whereas like the back edge of the board is still at a cooler temperature. Like you don't get that same kind of differential in
Yeah.
vapor phase.
The first oven we ever had, I know we're going over time now. The first oven we ever had was a 3-zone gold flow. And the first product we ever made was one of my pinball boards on it. And the pinball board was so long, part of the board would be outside the reflow oven, the other part would be at peak temperature.
It'd be liquidous.
Liquidous. Because that board is 14 inches long, and I
Yep.
think the effective reflow zone of all those of that oven was like 12.
That's exactly where something like the Heller comes into play, where you have 8 zones, where you have
And the zones are
and the
huge.
zones are wider. They're much
much
larger
bigger.
each. Yeah. In fact, I'm holding up a board that's 450 millimeters long. This board would be absolutely in multiple phases uh, throughout that oven, and that's not fantastic for the board
No, it's
or
not good
for
for
the
the board
parts
at
on the
all.
board.
No.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Vapor phase kind of solves that.
Yeah. All right. Any more things?
Oh, I think that's it for me.
So that was the Macrofab Engineering Podcast. We're your hosts, Parker Dillman.
And Stephen Craig,
Later, everyone.
take it easy.
Thank you, yes, you, our listener, for downloading our podcast. If you have a cool idea, project, or topic, let Steve and I know. Tweet us at MacFab, at Longhorn Engineer, or at AnalogENG, or email us at podcast@macfab.com. Also, check out our Slack channel. You can find it at macfab.com/Slack. Yeah,
So
we
I
didn't
got a
get-
guy that
Okay.
I'm asking to come on as a guest. I really hope he'll come on because he runs the tooling department, get this, at the US Mint. So this guy is in charge of making all the tools that make all of our coins.
That's cool.
And okay, there's 2 mints in the United States. There's one in Denver and there's one in Philadelphia. There's technically other ones, but they don't make everyday coins. They make the like commemorative coins and things like that. Just the Denver location, downtown Denver. Guess how many coins are made every day?
It's either going to be a really low number or a really high number.
Yeah. Which one?
A 250,000 coins.
20 million coins a day are made just at the Denver location. In the Philadelphia, another 20 million. So 40 million coins per day are made.
Do we need that many coins?
That's why I want to get this guy on because I'd love to talk about that. The funny thing is, there's one customer for his job. He literally has one customer, and it's Congress. So
Yeah.
Congress calls up and says, "This is our order for today. This is how many." And obviously, it's not Congress, but Congress has to vote on what his job is every day,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool. So yeah, he runs the department that mills all of the stamps basically for all the coins. I'd love to talk to him about that. So I'm working with him on it.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that one would be really fun.
seeing it. I got the
20
downloads.
million coins a day. I actually don't even know if there's restrictions on what he could even say. Like, is there like a special way that we make coins?
Oh, for like
Um,
counterfeiting and stuff.
or yeah, I don't know. Here's one stat that he gave me that I think is really funny. A penny cost 3 cents. It cost you and me three. I'm sorry. Yeah, a penny is 1 cent. It cost us 3 cents to make a penny.
Yeah. So there's a. I just clicked on a link on Twitter. There's a clock called Short Life, and it's a clock to remind you how much percentage of your life is left, based off of your date of birth, gender, the WHO's life expectancy, occupation, bunch of other stuff, and so it just lets you know what percentage of your life is left.
Hmm.
So you can see that clock every day. Click down a little bit. I don't know. That seems kind of depressing to think about that way. It's mostly they're like, oh, it's so like you can seize the day, but it's like I don't want. I can seize the day without being reminded that I'm going to die in like 30 something years. You know.
Yeah.
All right, I got the audio, so we're good to go. Later, everyone in YouTube lands, thank you for hanging out with us. Listen to
Yeah,
us
on a
ramble.
different day.
Yeah, on a Monday, listen to us rant about surface mount test equipment or assembly equipment, I guess. Till next week's going to be weird too. It's going to be on a Wednesday because I'm on vacation.
Have you seen that like it's gonna be absolutely nuts? Like we're getting a massive winter storm on Wednesday.
So on, oh, you mean this Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the place I'm going to go snowboarding is going to get like something like 40 inches of snow or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
I can't wait.
yeah. It's gonna be nuts.
Because I've boarded in blizzards before, and that was